The creature came out of the dark without a sound. Zira had been walking the ridge trail for less than 4 minutes when the smell hit her first. Something thick and mineral, like iron dissolved in warm water. Her secondary nostrils flared. Her 2 hearts, stacked one above the other in her narrow chest, began beating out of sync the way they always did when danger was close. Her bioluminescent skin, normally a calm pale silver along her forearms, flickered once toward deep violet. She had been on planet Earth for 11 days. The Xenobiological Research Station was 3 kilometers south. Her partner, Draxon, was already there, sleeping through his mandatory rest cycle. She had come out alone because she could not sleep, because the gravity here was slightly heavier than home and her joints ached in the night, because the sky on this planet made colors she had never seen anywhere else, and she wanted to stand under them without anyone watching her be amazed. She had not told anyone she was going outside the perimeter. She understood now that this was a mistake. The predator emerged from the tree line 40 meters ahead. It moved low to the ground, which Zira's briefing documents had described as a stalking posture. Her briefing documents had also described this animal. She recognized it immediately, a large male mountain lion. The dossier had called it an apex predator, a solitary hunter, capable of bringing down prey 6 times its own body weight through ambush and a precise grip, delivered to the base of the skull. The dossier had also said that encounters were rare and that humans had survived them. The dossier had not prepared her for the size of the thing. In photographs, it had looked manageable, almost elegant. In the dark, 40 meters away, with its pale eyes catching the moonlight and its body moving in that slow, deliberate way that was worse than running, it looked like a problem with no solution. Zira's translation implant chirped softly in her ear as it cycled through threat assessment. It offered her 3 options: retreat slowly without eye contact, make herself appear large. She did none of these things because she could not move. This was something they had not told her about herself until she was 12 years old. A neurological quirk, her mother had called it. In that voice adults use when they mean something more serious. Under extreme threat, Zira's nervous system did not choose between fight and flight. It chose a third option her species called the Stillwater response. Every signal from brain to limb simply stopped transmitting. She could feel her 2 hearts hammering against each other like something trying to get out. She could not move a single limb. The mountain lion had stopped 30 meters out. It was watching her the way she had seen nothing watch anything before. No part of it was somewhere else. She thought, with the strange clarity that comes when panic has nowhere left to go, "This is how I die on the 3rd planet from this star. And Draxon is going to have to write the report, and he is a terrible writer." Those had been silent. These footsteps were heavy and unhurried, coming from her left. From somewhere back along the trail she had just walked. Someone who was not afraid of the dark and not afraid of making noise in it. The mountain lion's attention did not shift from Zira. Then a voice, low and completely calm, said, "Don't move. I've got it." The voice belonged to a human male. He came to a stop about 10 meters to her left. She could see him in her peripheral vision, which on her species was wider than a human's by about 60 degrees. Wearing a dark jacket and worn boots, he was not carrying any visible equipment. He was looking at the mountain lion. The mountain lion finally shifted its gaze from Zira to this new presence. The human took one slow step forward. Zira's translation implant had no category for what she watched happen next. It kept buffering, offering her words in her home language that did not fit, rejecting them. It settled eventually on a phrase that translated roughly as voluntary entry into proximity with lethal force, which was, she thought, a very clean way of describing something that looked from the outside like absolute madness. The human's name, she would learn later, was Cole. He was 29 years old, originally from a small town in a state called Montana, which was apparently a place where encounters with large predators were not, as he would later put it, a whole thing. None of this was information she had when she was watching him close the distance between himself and a mountain lion with the same energy most people use to walk 2A. Its weight moved back onto its haunches in a way that her dossier had specifically described. Preparation for a lunge. Zira's secondary nostrils filled with that iron smell again. He said something to the animal, very quietly. She could not make out the words. It was not a shout, not a command, not the loud noise her translation implant had suggested she herself should make. It was something else, a register she did not have a word for yet. The mountain lion's haunches lowered, fractionally. Cole took another step, and Zira, locked inside her own motionless body, watched the human move. Part 2, she would think about it later. The way you think about something that does not make sense until you have turned it over enough. Times that the edges wear smooth. She would replay it in the particular high-resolution way her species stored threat memories, which meant she had access to it in almost perfect detail. Every fraction of every second of it, which was not very often because it made her skin flicker violet for hours afterward. What she remembered most was not the strength, though there had been that. What she remembered most was the economy of it. No wide swings, no stumbling, no desperate scrambling away. When the animal came off the ground, Cole was already moving to the side, and his movement was not retreat, it was redirection. And his hands found the animal's momentum and used it the way a river uses a stone, not stopping it but reshaping where it went. The mountain lion hit the ground 3 meters from where it had launched. It was back on its feet before she could fully process that it had fallen. Cole was already positioned differently. She could not entirely explain to herself how he had gotten to that position. Her threat memory tried to reconstruct the footwork and gave up, flagging the sequence as incomplete. The animal charged again, aiming for the legs. Cole went down to one knee, which looked for half a second like he had been caught, but was not that at all. His right arm hooked under the animal's chest. His body weight drove upward. The mountain lion left the ground in a way that was different from its own jump, less like power and more like surprise, and it landed on its side, a full 5 meters away, with a sound that Zira's implant cataloged as. It did not get up immediately. He was breathing hard. She could see that. There was a 3-inch tear in the left sleeve of his jacket. He looked at the animal. He waited. The mountain lion got its front legs under itself. Then it stood fully, turned, and walked back into the tree line without hurrying. It did not look back. Cole watched the dark where it had gone for another 15 seconds. He was counting to make sure it was actually leaving and not circling. Then he turned and looked at her. She was still frozen. He said, "You can breathe. It's gone." Which was not the problem. She wanted to explain this to him. Breathing was not the issue. The issue was that her motor system had staged a full withdrawal from the field and was not currently accepting requests for voluntary movement. She stared at him from inside her locked body, radiating what she could only hope was, "I understand what you said," and not, "I have also been turned to stone." Her skin was a solid, pulsing violet. Cole walked over to her. He stopped about 2 meters away, which she noted was a respectful distance. Though she could not have said how she knew, he understood it as such. He was looking at her with an expression she was still building a vocabulary for, not the exaggerated caution some humans used around her species. The ones who thought that moving carefully around a non-human meant moving as if the floor were made of something fragile. This expression was more like someone doing a quiet calculation. He said, "Is this a medical thing or a scared thing? Blink once for medical." She blinked once, not because it was entirely a medical thing, but medical felt more like information he could use. He did not try to touch her, which she appreciated at a level she could not fully articulate in that moment, but would think. He took one step back instead of forward, giving her more space, and he sat down on a nearby rock and looked out at the tree line. "I'll wait," he said. "Take your time." It took 4 minutes and 20 seconds for the still water response to release. She knew this exactly because her implant logged it. When the signal came back and her arms started working again, she immediately wrapped them around herself, which was not a calculated gesture, just the first thing her body did with the freedom. Cole looked back at her. "Okay." "Functional," she said in English. It came out rougher than usual, the translation implant still recalibrating after the override. "I am functional." "Good, yeah," he said. She looked at him, the tear in his jacket sleeve, the total absence of anything she could identify as fear in his face or body, even now, even in the aftermath. He was sitting on a rock on the edge of a dark trail like a person waiting for a bus. She said, "You are not afraid." He considered this. I was a little afraid, he said. Not a lot. Why not a lot? He seemed to think this was a reasonable question. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I've dealt with big animals before. Not that exact situation. You kind of stop thinking and just do the thing that needs doing. You grew up near these animals. Mountain lions, black bears, a couple of bull moose situations that were honestly worse than tonight. He said it like he was. Zira looked back at the tree line, the dark where the animal had gone. In my species, she said, an animal of that size and type is classified at the highest tier of threat. Contact with one is considered unsurvivable without significant technological assistance. Cole was quiet for a moment. How many tiers do you have? 5. He nodded slowly. And this one would be 5, she said. It would be a 5. He looked at the tree line, then back at her, his hands resting loose on his knees, the jacket sleeve torn and already forgotten. The way he had counted those 15 seconds watching the dark, methodical, and unhurried. Her implant was still trying to find the right word for what she had watched him do. It had cycled through 17 options in 4 languages and discarded all of them. She said, "What is your name?" "Cole," he said. "Cole Navarro. I am Zira." "I know," he said. "There are only 4 of your people at the station. I work the perimeter patrol." A pause. "You're not supposed to be outside the boundary alone." "I know," she said. "I won't report it." She looked at him again. "Why not?" he shrugged. A small gesture, one shoulder. "Because it's already over," he said. "And you already know." She did know. She knew several things in that moment, cataloging them the way her species cataloged anything it needed to hold on to. The smell of pine and cold air, the tear in his jacket, the way he had sat down on that rock as if her 4 minutes and 20 seconds were no imposition, and the mountain lion walking back into the dark. Part 3. Cole Navarro had worked the perimeter patrol at the research station for 7 months before the alien research team arrived. And in that time, he had learned 3 things about the job. First, the perimeter was not really there to keep things out. It was there to remind both sides that a boundary existed, which was different. Second, paperwork was the primary enemy of actual security, not wildlife, not equipment failure, not the occasional journalist who drove a truck into the outer fence on purpose, hoping to catch. Third, and most importantly, nothing that happened in the mountains at night stayed the same size when you described it later. He had not told anyone about the mountain lion encounter, not because he was hiding it, because the moment he tried to explain it, he could already hear how it would sound. "Oh, I just kind of pushed it over." Yeah, it left after that. No, it wasn't a big deal. And then the questions would start, and the questions were always worse. Zira had not told anyone either. He knew this because the station director, a sharp and perpetually exhausted man named Dr. Phil Garrett, would have found a way to mention it in the daily briefing. Phil mentioned everything in the daily briefing. Phil had briefing notes about briefing notes. On the 4th day, Cole was doing a standard eastern perimeter check when he came around the boulder cluster at Marker 7 and found Zira sitting on a flat rock with a data pad in her lap and her skin doing that silver and violet flicker in alternating waves, which he had learned from a laminated guide sheet in the break room, meant something like deep. He had memorized the laminated sheet the same way he memorized topographic maps. It was information about the terrain. He stopped a few feet back. "A patrol," he said by way of explanation. "I know," she said. "I have been watching you come down the ridge for 9 minutes." "Then you know I'm not." Her skin settled to a calmer silver. "You are outside the average," she said. "This is, for my species, a more interesting category than most." He sat down on a rock across from her, the same casual way he had sat on the trail that night. "What are you working on?" She looked at the data pad. "I'm cataloging behavioral variances in your species' threat response patterns." "A beat. You are one of the data points." "Should I be flattered?" "It is a neutral category," she said, "though the variance is significant." Cole looked out at the mountain ridge. The sky was doing its afternoon thing. The color that looked like someone had stacked blue and purple on top of each other and let them bleed at the edges. He had lived in these mountains his whole life and still was not entirely used to what the sky did. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Yes." "The thing that happened. When you couldn't move. Does that happen a lot?" She was quiet for a moment. He had learned from 7 months of perimeter work and a lifetime before that. That quiet after a question was not an invitation to fill the silence. It was someone deciding whether the question deserved an honest answer. "Since childhood," she said. "It is a neurological pattern. My species treats it as a defect." "Your species is wrong," he said. She looked at him. Something in the flicker of her skin changed. A frequency he didn't have a word for yet. "You say that without qualification. You survived, didn't you? Before I got there, you were still standing. You didn't run into something worse." He turned a small stone over in his fingers. "Your body found a way to keep you alive. That's not a defect. Zira studied him for a long time." "On my home planet," she said. "The still water response is associated with low survival rates, statistically. How often were your people encountering something like that mountain lion?" "Rarely. So the data set is small." She tilted her head, a gesture he had come to recognize as recalibration. "Her people did it when something required adjusting a prior assumption." "That is a valid methodological critique," she said, and there was something in her tone that he was fairly sure was the closest thing her species had. They stayed out there for another hour. She asked him questions, careful, specific ones. The kind a person asks when they are genuinely trying to understand something rather than confirm what they already think. He asked her a few in return, about her home planet, about what she was actually researching, about why she couldn't sleep the night of the mountain lion. She told him about the joints, the way the sky here produced colors she had not seen before, and how she had wanted to stand under them without being observed. "You can do that here," he said. "I'm not going to watch you be amazed." Her skin went very briefly gold. He did not ask about that one. Some things were worth not knowing immediately. On the way back to the station, he fell into step beside her without deciding to. She adjusted her stride, not to match his, but to make room for the fact of him walking there. The kind you only make for something you plan to account for again. He didn't say anything. That was the second day of what Cole would not have called anything at the time, what he would only later, when language became necessary, describe as the beginning of a very particular kind of attention. 2 days after that, something came out of the northern pass that made the mountain lion look like a yellow lab puppy. Part 4, the alert came at 0340 on a Tuesday. Cole was already awake. He had been awake for an hour, the way he sometimes was before something happened. Not from anxiety, but from the particular animal instinct that had kept him functional in the mountains since he was 9 years old. Something in the air pressure or the sound profile of the wind, or just a thing with no name that his body knew before his brain caught up. He was pulling his boots on when the station alarm went off. By the time he hit the exterior door, he had his jacket, his radio, and the long carbon-reinforced baton he carried on night patrol instead of a firearm because firearms in the mountains created more problems than they solved, most of them involving ricochets and the terrible acoustics of rock faces. The alarm was coming from the northern perimeter. Sector 12 was at the edge of where the tree line gave way to a talus slope. Loose flat stones stacked by erosion into an uneven ramp that led up toward the pass. It was bad terrain to cross at speed. He crossed it at speed anyway, reading the ground the way he had been reading ground since he was old enough to follow his uncle. He heard it before he saw it, a sound that his brain first categorized as structural, a building groaning before something gave way, and then recategorized immediately as biological because it moved. Low frequency, rhythmic, with something underneath it that resonated in his back teeth. He had heard elk bugle in the rut, had heard black bears in threat display, had once heard a bull moose in full charge through dense brush, and this sound shared qualities with all of those and was not any of them. He came around the long, flat boulder at the perimeter edge and stopped. Later, when Phil Garrett asked for a report, Cole would describe what he saw in the flat language of incident documentation. Approximate shoulder height 4.5 feet, length approximately 9 feet, not including tail, hexapedal, bioluminescent markings along dorsal ridge. Standing in front of it in that moment, the flat language would have seemed like a joke. The thing was armor-plated along its head and upper shoulders, not bone, something denser, with an iridescent sheen that caught the beam of his flashlight and scattered it in 6 directions. It had 4 eyes arranged in a horizontal band across its broad skull, each one currently fixed on the same point. Its feet, all 6 of them, were embedded in the talus slope, and the stones around them were cracked from the weight. It was making that low resonant sound from somewhere in its chest cavity. And the sound was not it was not a warning, because it was not directed at Cole. It was directed at Zira. She was 15 feet in front of the creature. She had come out to investigate the alarm, he figured, or had heard it from her quarters and gone to look before thinking better of it, or any number of sequences that ended here, with her standing on a stretch of broken rock and facing something that should have been impossible and being, once again, entirely frozen. Cole assessed in under 2 seconds. The creature had not lunged yet. It was in the pre-attack resonance phase, he guessed, though he was guessing based on what animals generally did rather than any specific knowledge of this specific animal. Its weight was distributed evenly, not loaded for a charge. He stepped into its line of sight. The 4 horizontal eyes tracked to him immediately. The sound shifted frequency. "Hey," he said, the same low register he had used with the mountain lion. "Look at me." The creature's head lowered. The iridescent plating along its skull caught the beam again, scattering light. Its 6 legs adjusted their stance on the broken rock. Cole took a step toward it. The thing's head came up. The sound went higher, sharper. Different animal, different logic. The approach that had worked before was not a universal key. It was a language, and he was working without a dictionary. He noticed that the bioluminescent markings along its spine were cycling, a pattern that started at the base of its tail and ran forward. He had no idea what the pattern meant. He watched it anyway, the way he watched any system he was trying to understand, looking for the logic underneath the behavior. The markings sped up. Cole brought his arm up, not threatening, just present. Something for the animal to track. Its 4 eyes moved to follow the arm. He moved the arm slowly to his left, and the creature's head followed. He had its attention. He began moving laterally, drawing its focus away from Zira, giving her the angle she needed to back up toward the perimeter wall. He did not look at her to see if she was moving. He kept his eyes on the creature, kept the slow lateral movement going, kept his breathing even, because animals read breath patterns the way humans read faces. The creature took 2 steps toward him, both front legs and 1 mid-leg, moving together in a sequence that reminded him of nothing he had. They stood in the dark on broken rock with the wind coming off the pass and the station alarm still cycling somewhere behind them. He needed it to go the other way. Back up the slope, back through the pass, back into wherever it had come from. He did not know if that was possible. He knew he needed it to be possible. He reached into his jacket pocket. A protein bar, half-eaten at some point, still wrapped in its foil. He held it out flat on his palm, arm extended. The creature's front left nostril, a slit along the side of its jaw, flared. The bioluminescent markings paused. He took a slow step forward. The markings resumed, different rhythm now, longer intervals. He took another step. Later, he would not be able to fully explain what he was doing or why he thought it might work. He would say he was watching the rhythm of the thing and trying to match it. The way you match a frightened horse's breathing before you approach. He would say it was probably stupid. He would say it worked. The creature's jaw dropped open, showing something that was not quite teeth, more like layered keratin ridges, and it exhaled through them in a long, rushing sound. Then it closed its jaw, all 6 legs realigning on the talus slope, and it began to move back up toward the pass, without hurrying, without looking back. Cole stood and watched until he could no longer hear its footsteps. Then he turned around. Zira was standing 8 feet behind him, no longer frozen, skin cycling through colors he had not seen before. She had not retreated to the perimeter wall. She had not moved at all. She had stood there and watched. Her implant said quietly in English, "That was a Drax Vorin." He looked at her. "From my star system," she said. Her voice was doing something strange, a harmonic he had not heard in it before. "It should not be here. It is not possible for it to be here." A pause. On my world, a Draxvoran has never, in recorded history, retreated from a confrontation. Cole looked back up at the dark pass. We export them as a classification, she said. For other species to understand what an apex predator is, they are the definition. He turned the empty protein bar wrapper over in his fingers. It left. She was staring at him. In the filtering dark, her skin had gone completely still, which his break room laminate sheet had not covered, and which he therefore had no category for. He said, "You okay?" The harmonic in her voice was still there when she answered. "I do not have the correct word in your language for what I currently am," she said. "We can figure that out later," he said. "Phil is going to have a lot of questions." She did not move immediately. She was still looking at him. Then she said very quietly, "Cole?" "Yeah." "Do humans know what they are?" He looked at her. "What do you mean?" Her skin began a slow pulse of something soft and pale, a color he had never seen it make before. "You have no context for yourself," she said. "No frame of reference. You simply exist inside the fact of what you are, and you treat it as ordinary." He thought about mountains and his uncle, and the way things in the dark were mostly just things in the dark if you stopped running from. "Isn't that just called living?" he said. She made a sound that his implant, on her end, was probably struggling with. It was somewhere between a question and an answer, and it was not in English. He held the door to the perimeter station open and waited for her to go in first. Part 5. Phil's questions took 40 minutes and produced 6 incident reports, 3 of which Phil wrote himself and 3 of which he made Cole dictate aloud because Cole's written reports, Phil often said, had the narrative depth of a grocery list. Cole sat in the plastic chair across from Phil's desk and answered everything accurately and left out nothing except the protein bar, because some details belonged to the moment and not to the documentation. Zira sat in the adjoining chair, which was slightly too wide for her frame, and answered Phil's questions about the Draxvoran in the careful, systematic way she answered most. She confirmed it was not a known migratory species. She confirmed it should not physically be on this planet. She confirmed that its behavioral response to Cole did not correspond to any recorded interaction, data for its species. Phil looked at Cole when she said this last part. Cole looked at the wall. The next 2 days were station lockdown. 3 officials from the Interstellar Research Council who wore identical expressions of controlled alarm and very nice shoes. They set up scanning arrays along the northern perimeter and ran them continuously. The Draxvoran did not reappear. Cole ran his patrols. He ate his meals in the break room. He slept in solid 4-hour blocks the way he had trained himself to sleep. Fully down and fully up with nothing in between. On the afternoon of the second lockdown day, he was at the eastern perimeter doing a calibration. Check on marker 3 when he heard footsteps behind him. He did not reach for anything. He already knew the sound. Zira stopped a few feet back. She was wearing the station-issue thermal layer over her usual field clothes. She had been wearing it for 2 days because the temperature had dropped and she had, in her words, recalibrated her assessment of Earth's climate from inconvenient to aggressively. "A calibration check," he said without turning. "I know," she said. "I have been following you for 6 minutes." "Then you know I'm not interesting." "You keep saying that," she said, "as evidence to the contrary continues to accumulate." He finished the marker calibration. Her skin was doing the deep silver and violet alternating pattern he now associated with her, thinking hard about something that mattered. "You want to ask me something?" he said. "Many things." "Start with one." She was quiet for a moment. Then, "When you were a child, what did the adults tell you about the animals?" He thought about this, about his uncle, who was the primary author of his education in these matters, a man of few words and practical habits who had believed strongly in the value of letting a person learn the weight of a thing by feeling it. "My uncle told me that animals are not good or evil. They're just trying to do what they're built to do. He said if you understand what a thing is built to do, you can usually predict it. And if you can predict it, you're not powerless. And if you cannot predict it, then you do the next thing. The next, What is the next thing? Whatever needs doing, he said. You don't figure it out in advance. You figure it out when you're in it. She looked at him. The silver-violet flicker slowed to something steadier. On my world, this approach would be considered irrational. Insufficient preparation leads to, all decisions should be made with complete information. How often do you have complete? The flicker slowed further. They walked the perimeter together without discussing whether they were going to do that. It happened the way most things between them had happened over the past 2 weeks, by becoming true before either of them named it. She asked him about Montana. He described it in the way he described most things, simply and without ornament. The mountains and the long winters and the specific quality of silence you got at altitude when the snow was fresh. She listened the way she did everything, with her whole attention, which was a quality he had noticed early, and which he found he had started orienting toward the way you orient toward a window. She told him about her home system, the triple moons and the tidal cycles they caused, the way her species built their cities along the tide lines because the rhythm of the water was part of their calendar, their architecture, their concept of time, everything built around the water, he said. The word in my language for home and the word for tide are the same word. He thought about this. That's a good word to have be the same. The light was going. The sky was doing its stacked colors again, the blue and purple bleeding at the edges. He watched it because it was there. She watched it because it was the reason she had gone outside the perimeter 11 days ago and every reason that came after, he said. How much longer is your research period? 43 days. He nodded. That is a problem, she said carefully, which I have been thinking about. He looked at her. Her skin had gone still again. The no-category stillness he had first seen after the Drax Vorin. He was starting to think it was not a neutral state. He was starting to think it was the state she went into when she had already made a decision and was waiting to see if the world would cooperate. The Research Council has proposed extending the station project, she said. Possibly 14. I know, he said. Phil mentioned it. I submitted a formal request this morning to be included in the extended team. He was quiet. Draxon called it professionally irregular, she said. He said my primary research interests did not align with the extended project scope. What did you say? I told him my research interests had expanded. The sky deepened. A hawk crossed the tree line in a long, flat glide, riding something invisible, certain of what it was doing. I should tell you, Cole said, that I already put in for the extended contract before today. She turned to look at him. The skin that had been still began a slow, soft pulse of that pale color he had no name for yet, the one from the night of the Drax Vorin. You submitted before my request, she said. Yeah. Without knowing I would submit. I knew what I was doing, he said. I didn't know what you'd do. A long pause. The hawk was gone. The sky was going dark at the edges where night came in first, at the corners of things. Yeah. I would like to learn what that color is called, she said. The one the sky does here. He looked up. The last of the light. It's called alpenglow. She tried the word. It came out a little different through her implant. The vowels stretched, the emphasis somewhere new. Alpenglow, she said again. That's it. She looked at the sky, and her skin matched it, for just a moment. That particular shade of rose and gold, and something that was not quite either. And Cole stood next to her, and did not look away, and did not say anything about it, because some things were allowed to just be what they were. The alarm did not go off that night. The mountains were quiet, and above the perimeter station, the sky finished its colors slowly, the way it always did, taking its time, wasting nothing.